July 2008. Palm Beach, Florida. Subtropical heat presses down on manicured lawns and gated driveways. The air smells faintly of salt from the Atlantic, mixed with fresh-cut grass and expensive silence. Behind tall hedges and security cameras, a door closes. Metal clicks into place. It is a sound of separation between those inside and those outside, between privilege and consequence. At first glance, this moment appears small. A wealthy man entering a correctional facility, a routine legal proceeding. Yet history rarely announces itself with explosions. Sometimes it announces itself with paperwork, sealed files, and doors that close quietly. This is the Jeffrey Epstein story, not only of one man, but of a system, and of what happens when wealth, power, and access learn how to hide in plain sight. Jeffrey Epstein did not begin as a public villain. He began as an enigma. Born in 1953 in Brooklyn, New York, the son of modest working-class parents, Epstein showed early academic aptitude. He attended Cooper Union and later New York University, though he never completed a degree. His rise was not marked by invention or innovation, but by proximity to money, influence, and secrecy. In the 1970s, Epstein entered the world of elite finance, first as a teacher at a prestigious Manhattan prep school, then as a junior figure connected to Wall Street power broker Leslie Wexner, the billionaire founder of L Brands. By the 1980s and 1990s, Epstein had accumulated extraordinary wealth, multiple residences across the United States and abroad, and access to private aircraft. His lifestyle suggested influence far exceeding any publicly verifiable business success. The locked door became his constant companion. To outsiders, Epstein appeared untouchable. He hosted politicians, scientists, royalty, financiers, and celebrities. His homes were fortified not only with security systems, but with social insulation, a protective layer of reputation, philanthropy, and cultivated mystery. He presented himself as a benefactor of research, education, and intellectual advancement. Behind those locked doors, however, a different reality was taking shape. The allegations would later reveal a pattern that spanned decades. Beginning in the late 1990s and early 2000s, young girls, many of them minors, many from financially vulnerable backgrounds, accused Epstein of sexual abuse, exploitation, and trafficking. The accounts followed disturbingly similar outlines: recruitment through promises of money, private residences, restricted access, the presence of staff who facilitated movement but not protection, doors that closed, doors that stayed closed. In 2005, the silence fractured. A Palm Beach police investigation began after the mother of a 14-year-old girl reported sexual abuse by Epstein. Detectives interviewed multiple victims. Search warrants were executed. Evidence was collected. The local police department compiled a detailed case recommending felony charges. The facts, on paper, were substantial. Yet when the case moved upward, the locked door appeared again. This time not at a mansion, but within the justice system itself. In 2008, Epstein entered into a controversial non-prosecution agreement with federal prosecutors. He pleaded guilty to lesser state charges of soliciting prostitution and procurement of minors. In exchange, he avoided federal prosecution and served just 13 months in a county jail, with extensive work release privileges allowing him to leave the facility for up to 12 hours a day, 6 days a week. For the victims, the contrast was stark. They had expected accountability. They encountered insulation. Court records later showed that victims were not informed of the deal, a violation of federal law. The locked door had closed again, not to protect the vulnerable, but to protect the connected. At the time, Epstein was registered as a sex offender. On paper, the system had acted. In reality, Epstein resumed much of his previous lifestyle. His wealth remained intact. His social circles, though somewhat narrowed, did not disappear. The machinery of access continued to function. What many believed to be an ending was merely an intermission. For years, Epstein's case lingered at the edges of public awareness. Investigative journalists continued to pursue unanswered questions. Civil lawsuits emerged and were settled. Documents were sealed. Names were redacted. Each layer added thickness to the locked door. Then, in July 2019, the door finally appeared to open. Federal prosecutors in New York arrested Jeffrey Epstein on charges of sex trafficking of minors. This time, the indictment was sweeping. It described an organized system of recruitment, abuse, and silence. It alleged crime committed across state lines. The charges carried the possibility of life imprisonment. The tone changed. Epstein was denied bail. He was placed in the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Manhattan, a federal facility known for housing high-profile detainees. The world watched closely. The locked door, at last, seemed to be under pressure. Inside the jail, Epstein experienced what he had long avoided: confinement without privilege. On August 10, 2019, Jeffrey Epstein was found dead in his cell. The official ruling was suicide by hanging. The door closed one final time. The reaction was immediate and global. Skepticism flourished. Questions multiplied. Surveillance cameras malfunctioned. Guards reportedly failed to conduct required checks. The facility had known staffing shortages. Epstein had previously been placed on suicide watch and then removed. Facts emerged slowly, carefully, filtered through investigations and reports. The Department of Justice acknowledged systemic failures. The Federal Bureau of Prisons accepted responsibility for operational lapses. 2 guards were later charged with falsifying records, though those charges were eventually resolved without prison sentences. For many, the manner of Epstein's death felt symbolic. Not proof of conspiracy, but evidence of collapse. The system had failed to keep him alive long enough to testify, failed to extract full accountability, failed to provide public reckoning proportional to the harm described by dozens of victims. The locked door had not been forced open. It had simply disappeared, taking answers with it. Yet the story did not end there. In the years that followed, civil litigation expanded. Epstein's estate paid settlements to victims. Courts ordered the unsealing of documents connected to associates, flights, and communications. The public learned more about the scale of Epstein's network, though not all questions were answered. The evidence painted a consistent picture. Epstein did not operate in isolation. He relied on enablers, employees, recruiters, pilots, legal intermediaries, and on an environment that deferred to wealth and reputation. What changed was not the past, but perception. The Epstein case altered how institutions viewed secrecy. It exposed weaknesses in plea bargaining, prosecutorial discretion, and the treatment of victims. It reignited debates about consent, power imbalance, and justice delayed. For the public, it became a lesson in contrast. Many Americans are taught that the law is blind, that justice applies equally, that doors open the same way for everyone. Epstein's life suggested otherwise. Behind locked doors, rules bent, timelines slowed, consequences softened. The same mechanism designed to ensure fairness became tools of avoidance. The symbolic object returns again and again. The locked door. In Epstein's homes, it separated abuse from the outside world. In courtrooms, it shielded negotiation from victims. In prison, it closed before the full truth could emerge. And yet, those also represent choice. They can be opened. The enduring legacy of the Epstein affair is not a single death or a single indictment. It is a collective recognition that transparency is not automatic. It must be demanded, maintained, protected against those who benefit from darkness. Freedom, in a democratic society, is not only the absence of change. It is the presence of accountability. It is a refusal to allow power to become a substitute for innocence. The locked door remains, not as a mystery, but as a warning. History does not ask whether such doors exist. It asks who is allowed to close them, and who is finally brave enough to force them open.